Captain Hyunwoo Kim stared at the scanner display with growing concern. The readings made no sense. 12 massive objects had appeared at the edge of the solar system, moving toward Europa with purpose. They were too big to be asteroids and too organized to be natural. "Run another scan," he ordered his sensor operator. The young ensign's fingers flew over the controls of the patrol ship Defiant. "Same reading, Captain. 12 objects, each about 2 kilometers long. They're definitely artificial." Kim felt his stomach tighten. In all his years patrolling the outer system, he had never encountered anything like this. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Today, it seemed they had their answer. "Send a message on all frequencies," Kim commanded. "Unknown vessels, you have entered human space. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." Minutes passed with no response. The objects continued their steady approach toward Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. Kim tried again, this time in mathematics and basic physics symbols that any intelligent species should understand. Still nothing. On Europa's dark side, hidden from Earth's telescopes, something incredible was happening. The first alien ship had landed, its massive hull settling onto the ice with barely a sound. Ramps extended from its belly, and creatures emerged that looked like nothing Earth had ever produced. The Skarath were tall, standing nearly 3 meters, high on powerful legs. Their skin was dark green and covered in scales that gleamed under their artificial lights. Yellow eyes sat above long snouts filled with sharp teeth. They moved with the confidence of conquerors. Warlord Krex stepped onto Europa's surface and breathed the filtered air from his suit with satisfaction. This moon would make an excellent forward base for studying the primitive humans. The Galactic Council had provided basic information about the species. They were young, barely capable of space travel, and completely unaware of the greater galaxy around them, perfect for the Skarath Empire's purposes. "Begin construction of the research facility," Krex ordered his subordinates. "I want defensive positions established within 6 hours. The humans must not discover our presence until we are ready." The Skarath had done this many times before. They would study a primitive species, learn their weaknesses, then either conquer them or destroy them completely. It was how the Empire had grown so powerful. Back on the Defiant, Captain Kim was running out of options. The unknown ships had reached Europa and were no longer moving. Scans showed they had landed on the moon's surface. "Captain," his communications officer called out, "I'm detecting some kind of construction activity on Europa. Energy signatures suggest they're building something big." Kim made a decision that would change everything. "Set course for Europa. Full speed." "Sir, shouldn't we contact Earth first?" "We will. But we need to get closer and see what we're dealing with. This is our job." The Defiant was a small ship, designed for patrol duties and rescue operations. It carried only basic weapons and a crew of 30. But it was fast and well-equipped, with sensors. As they approached Europa, the scanner readings became clearer. The alien ships were massive, armed with weapons that registered as incredibly powerful. Worse, they were building some kind of base on the moon's surface. Kim opened a channel to Earth. "This is Captain Kim aboard the Defiant. We have a situation at Europa. 12 unknown vessels of alien origin have established what appears to be a military base. Request immediate instructions." The message would take time to reach Earth and more time for a response to come back. Until then, Kim had to act on his own judgment. He tried one more time to contact the aliens. "Unknown vessels, this is Captain Kim of the human patrol ship Defiant. You are in violation of human space. Please respond and explain your presence here." This time, there was a response. Not words, but action. Warning alarms screamed throughout the Defiant as energy weapons locked onto their ship. Kim had just enough time to shout, "Evasive maneuvers!" before the first plasma bolt struck. The blast tore through the Defiant's hull, like paper. Emergency lights flickered on as main power failed. The ship spun helplessly, its engines damaged and life support struggling. On Europa, Warlord Krex watched the crippled human ship with amusement. "One shot," he said to his second-in-command. "Their technology is even more primitive than the Council reported. Should we destroy them completely, Warlord?" "No. Let them drift. When they are rescued, they will carry word of our power back to their leaders. Fear will make the conquest easier. It was a mistake that would cost the Skarath everything on the Us." Dying defiant, Captain Kim crawled through the damaged bridge to the emergency communications panel. Half his crew was dead or injured, but he had one last duty to perform. With bloody fingers, he activated the emergency beacon and recorded a message. "This is Captain Kim. Unknown alien force has attacked without provocation. They have established a base on Europa. They are hostile. Repeat, we are under attack by alien forces." The message transmitted just as the ship's power finally failed completely. Light minutes away, Admiral So-Young Park was reviewing fleet readiness reports when the emergency signal reached Earth. The young woman who had risen through the ranks, by being smarter and tougher than anyone else, immediately understood what she was seeing. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and their new neighbors had already declared war. Park's first call was to General Wan-Shik Choi, the overall commander of Earth's military forces. Her second was to activate Protocol Omega, a defense plan that had been decades in development, but never tested. Within hours, every military facility on Earth was buzzing with activity. Ships that had been in maintenance were quickly prepared for combat. Weapons that existed only in classified files were brought online. Personnel who had trained for a war they hoped would never come were called to duty. The Skarath expected the humans to panic, to surrender, or to beg for mercy. They had conquered dozens of species and always seen the same patterns of behavior. They were about to learn that humans were different. Admiral Park stood in the command center, looking at the tactical display showing the alien base on Europa. Around her, dozens of officers worked at their stations, coordinating humanity's response. "How long until the fleet can reach Europa?" she asked. 18 hours at maximum burn, Admiral." "Too long. What about the rapid response ships?" 12 hours, but they're lightly armed." Park smiled grimly. "That's all right. We're not going to meet them head-on anyway." She turned to address the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to show the galaxy what happens when someone attacks humanity without provocation. Let's make sure they never forget the lesson." Admiral So-Young Park stood before the emergency council, her uniform crisp despite having been awakened at 3 in the morning. The massive screen behind her showed the tactical situation at Europa. 12 alien ships and a growing base that threatened everything humanity had built. "The situation is clear," she said to the assembled military leaders. "An unknown alien force has invaded our space and attacked our people without warning or provocation. Captain Kim and his crew died defending human territory. We will not let their sacrifice be meaningless." General Wan-Shik Choi leaned forward at the conference table. "What do we know about their capabilities?" "The energy readings from their weapons are unlike anything in our databases," replied Dr. Mi-Young Han, the head of Xenotechnology Research. "However, our analysis of the attack on the Defiant shows they were using directed plasma weapons. Powerful, but not beyond our ability to counter." Colonel Jamin Lee, commander of Special Operations, studied the reconnaissance images. "They've chosen their position well. Europa's dark side gives them cover from direct observation from Earth, but it also limits their own sensor coverage." Admiral E. Park nodded. "Which brings us to our response options. Gentlemen, lady, we could attempt diplomatic contact. We could appeal to whatever galactic authority might exist. Or we could show these invaders that humanity doesn't roll over for bullies." The room fell silent for a moment. Everyone understood the implications. This decision would determine humanity's place in the galaxy for generations to come. General Choi spoke first. "They fired first. They invaded our space. If we don't respond with strength, we'll be seen as weak by every other species out there." "I agree," said Colonel Lee. A strong response now might prevent larger conflicts later. Dr. Han looked concerned. We don't know how many more ships they have. This could be just a small force compared to their full military. All the more reason to make this force disappear completely, Admiral Park replied. We need to send a message that attacking humanity comes with a price. The vote was unanimous. Operation Homecoming was authorized. While the leadership planned, Captain Dong Hyun Kang was already in space aboard the stealth ship Silent Hunter. His vessel was one of humanity's most advanced, equipped with experimental technology that had never been tested in combat. Stealth systems online, reported his navigator. We're invisible to conventional sensors. The Silent Hunter approached Europa using a flight path that took advantage of the gas giant's radiation belt. Even if the aliens had sophisticated sensors, the natural interference would mask the ship's approach. On board, Colonel Lee and his special operations team prepared for insertion. 20 soldiers, the best humanity had to offer, equipped with the latest combat gear and enough explosives to level a city block. Remember, Lee briefed his team, our primary mission is intelligence gathering. We need to know what we're facing, how their technology works, and what their weaknesses are. Secondary mission is to cause as much damage as possible to their operations. Sergeant Bo Ram Song, the team's technical specialist, checked her equipment one final time. If their computer systems are anything like ours, I should be able to create some interesting problems for them. Meanwhile, on Europa, Warlord Krex was growing frustrated. His technicians were having unexpected difficulties with the base construction. The moon's ice was harder than expected, and several pieces of equipment had malfunctioned. Warlord, one of his subordinates reported, we're detecting some unusual energy signatures from Jupiter's radiation belt. Krex barely looked up from his tactical display. Cosmic phenomena. Ignore it unless it threatens our operations. It was exactly the kind of arrogance that had made the Scarath Empire powerful, and exactly the kind of mistake that would bring them down. The Silent Hunter reached Europa's surface undetected. In the cargo bay, Colonel Lee's team made final preparations for their mission. Drop zone is 2 kilometers from the main alien installation, Captain Kang reported. Weather is clear, no atmospheric interference. Understood, Lee replied. We'll be radio silent until extraction. If you don't hear from us in 12 hours, assume we're compromised and proceed with contingency plans. The Special Operations Team deployed silently across Europa's ice. Their suits were designed for extreme cold and low gravity, allowing them to move quickly across the alien landscape. As they approached the Scarath base, they got their first close look at alien technology. The structures were clearly advanced, built from materials that seemed to absorb light. Energy weapons mounted on defensive towers swept the perimeter in regular patterns. Predictable, whispered Lee into his helmet microphone. They're following standard military doctrine. No adaptation for local conditions. Sergeant Song identified the main communications array and power generation facility. Give me 30 minutes with their computer systems and I can create chaos throughout their entire operation. The team split into 3 groups. Lee led the assault team toward the command center. Song and her technical group moved toward the SE, computer core. The third group, led by Lieutenant Yoon Ji-yoon, positioned themselves to provide covering fire and create diversions. Inside the Scarath base, the aliens continued their work, completely unaware that humanity had already penetrated their defenses. Their confidence in their technological superiority blinded them to the possibility that primitive humans could threaten them. Sergeant Song reached the alien computer core first. The systems were unlike anything she had seen, but the principles were familiar. Energy flowed through pathways, data moved in patterns, and security protocols tried to keep intruders out. Just like hacking any other system, she muttered, connecting her portable interface to the alien network. Just with better graphics. Within minutes, she had gained access to their communication systems. The aliens were sending regular reports back to something called the Skarath Empire, detailing their progress in establishing the research facility. More importantly, she learned their true purpose. They weren't just studying humanity, they were preparing for conquest. "Colonel," she transmitted on a secured channel, "you need to see this. They're not here for research. This is an invasion." Lee's team had reached the command center. Through their scopes, they could see dozens of alien soldiers moving through the facility. The creatures were large and obviously dangerous, but they moved with the casual confidence of occupiers. "Beginning data collection," Lee reported, "counting approximately 200 alien personnel, mixed military and technical staff." Lieutenant Yoon's team had positioned themselves near the main power generators. "Ready to create a distraction on your command, Colonel." "Negative." "Hold position. Song, how much more time do you need?" 5 more minutes. I'm copying their entire database." Those 5 minutes stretched like hours. Every second brought the risk of discovery. But Song worked with calm precision, extracting every piece of information about Skarath technology, military capabilities, and strategic plans. Finally, she disconnected from the alien systems. "Package delivered and received, Colonel. We have everything. All teams, begin withdrawal. Yoon, light them up." The charges that Yoon's team had placed on the power generators exploded simultaneously. The alien base plunged into darkness as emergency lighting flickered on throughout the facility. In the confusion, Lee's team extracted without being detected. They had achieved something that would have seemed impossible hours earlier. They had infiltrated an alien military installation and stolen their most sensitive information. As the Silent Hunter departed Europa, carrying its precious cargo of intelligence, Admiral Park received the preliminary reports. What she learned changed everything. "They call themselves the Skarath Empire," she told the Emergency Council. "They've conquered dozens of other species. This base on Europa is just the beginning. They're planning a full-scale invasion of human space." General Choi's face was grim. "How many ships?" According to the intelligence Colonel Lee obtained, they have over 1,000 vessels in their main battle fleet. The 12 ships at Europa are just an advance force. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity was facing an enemy that outnumbered them hundreds to one. "However," Admiral Park continued, "we now have detailed information about their technology, their tactics, and their weaknesses. And they still don't know what we're truly capable of." She looked around the table at the faces of humanity's defenders. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to show them that some species fight back, and when humans fight back, we fight to win." The attack began at dawn, Earth time. Not that it mattered on Europa, where the sun never rose on the dark side where the Skarath had built their base. But timing was important for coordination, and Admiral Park wanted every human ship to strike at precisely the same moment. Captain Dong-Hyun Kang guided the Silent Hunter through Jupiter's radiation belts once again. This time, his ship wasn't alone. 3 other stealth vessels followed in his wake, invisible to conventional sensors and carrying enough firepower to crack a moon. "All ships, this is Kang. Target acquisition in 30 seconds. In the fighter, bay of the cruiser Retribution, Lieutenant Yoon Ji-yoon ran through her final pre-flight checks. Around her, 23 other pilots prepared their fighters for what would be humanity's first space battle against alien forces. "Remember," she told her squadron over the comm system, "they've never fought humans before. They don't know how. We think how we move or how we fight. Use that advantage." Her fighter was a sleek craft, barely 20 meters long but packed with the latest human technology. Plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, and defensive systems that could outmaneuver anything the aliens had seen before. On the bridge of the Retribution, Captain Soo-jin Hwang watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. The Skarath had made a critical error by establishing their base on Europa. They thought the location gave them cover, but it actually trapped them in a gravity well with limited escape routes. "All departments report ready, Captain," her executive officer announced. "Very well. Signal the fleet. Begin Operation Homecoming. The first strike came from the stealth ships. 4 vessels that the Skarath couldn't see or detect suddenly appeared on their sensors as they launched a massive barrage of quantum torpedoes. The aliens had never encountered quantum-guided weapons before. Their defensive systems were designed to stop conventional missiles and energy weapons. They had no defense against torpedoes that could phase through matter until the moment of impact. 3 Skarath ships exploded simultaneously. The 4th took massive damage to its engines and weapon systems before its crew even understood they were under attack. On Europa, Warlord Krex felt the ground shake as one of his ships crashed into the base's outer perimeter. Emergency alarms screamed throughout the facility as his subordinates tried to understand what was happening. "Report!" he roared. "We're under attack, Warlord! Unknown vessels using weapons we've never seen before. Impossible! Our sensors show nothing." But even as he spoke, another Skarath ship died in a brilliant explosion that lit up Europa's dark side like a small sun. Lieutenant Yoon's fighter squadron emerged from behind Jupiter's shadow at full acceleration. The alien patrol ships that had been circling Europa suddenly found themselves facing 24 human fighters moving in attack patterns they couldn't predict. "Break and attack," Yoon commanded. "Show them how humans dance." The dogfight that followed would be studied in military academies for generations. The Skarath pilots were skilled and experienced, but they flew according to rigid tactical doctrines that had worked against every other species they'd encountered. Humans didn't follow anyone's tactical doctrine. Yoon's fighter twisted through space in a spiral pattern that should have been impossible at those speeds. Her targeting computer locked onto a Skarath interceptor and fired. The plasma bolts struck the alien ship's engines, sending it tumbling helplessly toward Jupiter's atmosphere. Around her, the other human pilots performed similar feats of impossible flying. They used Jupiter's gravity to slingshot around moons, hid in asteroid fields, and attacked from angles that no other species would have considered. Within 10 minutes, the entire Skarath patrol force was destroyed. The human fighters had taken no losses. Back on Europa, engineer Bo-Ram's song was putting the final phase of her plan into action. The computer virus she had planted during the reconnaissance mission was finally activating, spreading through every Skarath system on the base. The aliens watched in horror as their own defensive weapons turned against them. Automated turrets began firing on Skarath personnel. Environmental systems shut down in critical areas. Communication arrays broadcast human music instead of military orders. "What is happening?" Warlord Krex demanded. "The humans have somehow infected our entire computer network. We're losing control of all automated systems." Song's virus was a masterpiece of digital warfare. It didn't just destroy Skarath systems, it turned them into weapons against their creators. Every piece of alien technology on Europa became a tool for humanity's revenge. Captain Huang's cruiser Retribution moved into the final attack position. The massive human warship had remained hidden behind one of Jupiter's moons, while the smaller vessels struck first. Now it was time to deliver the killing blow. "Target the remaining Skarath ships," Huang ordered. "Full spread of antimatter torpedoes." The torpedoes that launched from the Retribution were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human scientists had discovered a way to use quantum entanglement to guide antimatter weapons, making them impossible to jam or intercept. Each torpedo contained enough antimatter to destroy a city. 12 torpedoes meant complete annihilation for whatever they struck. The remaining Skarath ships tried desperately to escape Europa's gravity well, but they were too late. The antimatter torpedoes reached them before they could achieve orbital velocity. The explosions were visible from Earth. Warlord Krex found himself trapped in a base that was tearing itself apart around him. Half his ships were destroyed. His computer systems were compromised, and human forces controlled the space around Europa. For the first time in his military career, he considered surrender. "Send a message to the human fleet," he ordered. Tell them we wish to negotiate." The response came from Admiral Park herself, broadcast on all frequencies so every Scarath could hear it clearly. "You entered human space without permission. You attacked our ships without provocation. You fired first and showed no mercy. Why should we show you any?" We were following orders from the Empire," Krex transmitted back. "We can arrange a ceasefire, negotiations between our governments." "Your government is not here," Park replied coldly. "You are, and you chose to make war on humanity. Now face the consequences." The final assault on the Scarath base was swift and brutal. Human Marines, led by Colonel Jamin Lee, landed on Europa's surface and stormed the alien fortifications. The Scarath fought bravely, but their weapons were designed for battles against other Scarath forces. Human armor and tactics were completely foreign to them. In less than 4 hours, the battle was over. The Scarath invasion force was completely destroyed. Not a single alien ship escaped to report back to their empire. Standing in the ruins of the alien command center, Admiral Park broadcast a message that would echo throughout the galaxy. "This is Admiral So-Young Park of the Human Defense Fleet. To any species that might be listening, human space is sovereign territory. We did not seek this conflict, but we finished it. Any future incursions will be met with overwhelming force." She paused, looking at the wreckage around her. "We are not interested in conquest or empire. We only want to be left alone. But if you threaten our people or our territory, you will discover that humans are not the peaceful species you might expect. We are survivors. We are warriors. And we do not forgive those who strike first." The message was transmitted on every frequency humanity could access, broadcasted toward every star system within range. Somewhere in the darkness of space, other alien species received that transmission and began to wonder about the new power that had just announced itself to the galaxy. The Scarath Empire would eventually learn what had happened to Warlord Krex and his invasion force. When they did, they would face a choice: accept the loss and leave humanity alone, or send a larger force to finish what Krex had started. Admiral Park hoped they would choose wisely, but she was prepared for war either way. The Battle of Europa was over. The war for humanity's future was just beginning. The news of the Scarath defeat traveled through galactic communication networks like wildfire. In council chambers across 100 worlds, alien leaders struggled to understand what they were hearing. The Scarath Empire, conquerors of 37 species, had lost an entire fleet to a race that most of the galaxy considered primitive. The implications were staggering. Emperor Vashitak of the Scarath received the report in his throne room on the capital world of Scaros. The messenger, a minor military commander who had somehow survived the disaster, trembled as he delivered the news. "Impossible," the Emperor hissed, his scaled hide darkening with rage. "One small human patrol ship was destroyed easily. How could they defeat an entire battle group?" "Your Majesty, the humans possess technology we have never encountered. Their weapons phase through our shields, their ships appear and disappear without warning, and their computer systems corrupted our entire base." Emperor Vashitak rose from his throne, his 3-meter frame towering over the messenger. "Then we will send a force large enough to overwhelm any technology they possess. Summon Admiral Kratos. Tell him to prepare the Second Fleet for immediate deployment." The Second Fleet was the pride of the Scarath Empire, 200 warships supported by countless smaller vessels. They had crushed entire civilizations without breaking formation, but Emperor Vashitak had made the same mistake as Warlord Krex. He underestimated humanity's ability to adapt and learn. Admiral Tae-Ho Yun stood in the command center of the human space station watchtower, studying the latest intelligence reports. Hidden sensors throughout the outer system had detected massive energy signatures moving toward human space. "How many ships?" he asked his intelligence officer. "Best estimate is 200 capital ships plus support vessels. Total force strength around 400 ships. Admiral Yun nodded calmly. The numbers were overwhelming, but numbers alone didn't win battles. Activate Protocol Hunter. All units to assigned positions. Protocol Hunter was a defense strategy that turned human space itself into a weapon. Instead of meeting the enemy in traditional battle formations, human forces would use guerrilla tactics on an interstellar scale. Captain Su Jin Huang received her orders aboard the heavy cruiser Retribution. Her ship was now part of a hunter-killer group that included 2 destroyers and a stealth vessel. Their mission was simple: strike fast, strike hard, and disappear before the enemy could respond. "Take us to Asteroid Belt 7, she ordered her navigator. "Time to show these aliens what it means to hunt in human space." Asteroid Belt 7 was one of dozens of debris fields scattered throughout the outer solar system. To the approaching Skarath fleet, it looked like empty space. They had no way of knowing that human engineers had spent months preparing these fields for war. Specialist Min-Ho Park worked frantically in the Electronic Warfare Center on Mars. His job was to coordinate the network of hidden sensors and automated weapons platforms that Admiral Yun had deployed throughout human territory. "Sensor Grid Alpha is online," he reported. "We have full coverage from Saturn to the outer system boundary. Every asteroid, every piece of debris, every seemingly empty patch of space now contained human technology. Motion sensors, weapon platforms, communication relays, and targeting computers formed an invisible web that would entangle any invading force." The Skarath Second Fleet approached human space with confidence. Admiral Kratos, a veteran of 50 successful campaigns, studied the tactical displays with satisfaction. "Maintain formation," he ordered his fleet commanders. "Intelligence indicates the humans have only a few dozen warships. We will crush them with overwhelming force." His ships moved in the traditional Skarath battle formation, a massive wedge designed to break through enemy lines and destroy opposition through pure firepower. It had worked against every other species they had encountered. Would not work against humans. The first attack came from nowhere. Captain Huang's hunter-killer group emerged from behind a large asteroid and launched a full spread of quantum torpedoes at the Skarath vanguard. 6 alien ships exploded before they even knew they were under attack. The human ships disappeared. "Back into the asteroid field before the Skarath could return fire. Where did they go?" Admiral Kratos demanded. "Unknown, Admiral. Our sensors show nothing." "Then scan the entire asteroid field." "Sir, there are over 10,000 objects in that field. It would take hours to scan them all." Admiral Kratos realized he was facing something he had never encountered before, an enemy that refused to fight fair. The second attack came from a completely different direction. Commander Ji-Hai Lee's destroyer squadron struck the Skarath rearguard using the same hit-and-run tactics. More alien ships died in brilliant explosions, while the human attackers vanished like ghosts. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving multiple distress signals from throughout the fleet. Ships are being attacked from all directions." The Skarath were learning that human space was full of surprises. Automated weapon platforms that had been hidden in seemingly empty space suddenly activated, firing antimatter missiles at any alien ship that came within range. Specialist Park watched his tactical display with grim satisfaction. The Skarath fleet was spreading out, trying to avoid the hidden weapons, but this only made them more vulnerable to the human hunter-killer groups. "Ghost Squadron is in position," he reported to Admiral Yun. "Captain Kang is ready to strike their command ship, Captain Dong Hyun Kang's stealth vessel." Silent Hunter had penetrated deep into the Skarath formation without being detected. His target was Admiral Kratos' flagship, a massive dreadnought that served as the fleet's command center. "All stop," Kang ordered quietly. "Prepare quantum torpedoes for close-range attack." The Silent Hunter drifted silently through space, invisible to the Skarath sensors. Kang's crew worked with practiced precision, targeting the alien flagship's most critical systems. "Fire," Kang whispered. 4 quantum torpedoes struck the Skarath dreadnought simultaneously. The massive ship's shields collapsed, its engines failed, and its command center disappeared in a ball of antimatter fire. Admiral. Kratos died without ever seeing the enemy that killed him. The Skarath fleet began to panic. Their admiral was dead, their formation was broken, and an invisible enemy was picking them off one by one. Ships tried to retreat, only to run into more hidden weapon platforms. Captain Huang's cruiser Retribution emerged from behind another asteroid, its guns blazing. The massive human warship had been modified with experimental weapons that the Skarath had never seen before. Target their communications arrays, Huang ordered. Cut off their ability to coordinate. The Retribution's plasma cannons swept across the Skarath formation, destroying communication relays and sensor arrays. Without their electronic systems, the alien ships became blind and deaf. Commander Lee's destroyers struck from yet another angle, their missiles seeking out the alien ship's weapon systems. Human computer viruses planted by hidden drones began corrupting Skarath navigational systems. The mighty Second Fleet of the Skarath Empire found itself lost in human space, unable to communicate, unable to coordinate, and under constant attack from an enemy they couldn't see or predict. All ships retreat, the surviving Skarath commanders broadcast on emergency frequencies. Fall back to Rally Point Beta. But there was no safe retreat in human space. Admiral Yoon's hunters had anticipated every escape route. The Skarath ships that tried to flee found themselves running straight into carefully planned ambushes. Lieutenant Yoon Ji-yoon's fighter squadron was waiting near the system's edge when the first fleeing Skarath ships arrived. Her pilots fell, on the disorganized aliens like wolves attacking a broken herd. No survivors, Admiral Yoon had ordered. None of them can be allowed to report back to their empire. It was a harsh command, but a necessary one. Humanity needed time to prepare for the larger war that was coming. The Battle of the Outer System lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the Skarath Second Fleet had ceased to exist. 400 alien ships had been reduced to drifting debris and radiation. Human losses were minimal. 3 fighters and 1 destroyer damaged. Admiral Yoon stood in his command center, looking at the tactical display that showed the locations of destroyed enemy ships scattered throughout human space. "Send a message to Earth," he ordered. "Tell Admiral Park that the hunters have finished their work." Somewhere in the darkness beyond the solar system, other alien species monitored the radio signals coming from human space. They heard Admiral Yoon's report, and they began to understand that the galaxy had changed. Humanity was no longer a minor species to be ignored or conquered. They were predators who had just demonstrated their ability to destroy forces many times their size. The hunt was over, but the war was just beginning. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session on the neutral world of Nexus Prime. Representatives from dozens of species filled the Great Chamber, their various forms creating a colorful tapestry of galactic civilization. Ambassador Thex Moran of the Altarian Federation spoke first, his blue skin shimmering with concern. The destruction of 2 Skarath fleets by a previously unknown species has created an unprecedented situation. We must establish contact with these humans before this conflict spreads. Council Speaker Veltar, an ancient being whose species had mediated galactic disputes for millennia, nodded slowly. The humans have demonstrated military capability far beyond our initial assessments. However, they have also shown restraint by not expanding their attacks beyond their claimed territory. Ambassador Zefkira of the Crystalline Collective disagreed. They destroyed 600 Skarath ships without offering surrender terms. This is the behavior of a species that prefers extermination over negotiation. What none of the council members knew was that human intelligence agents had already infiltrated several galactic communication networks. Director Kyung-min Oh's operatives were listening to every word of the debate. On Earth, President Haiwan Jung reviewed the intelligence reports with growing concern. The galactic community was preparing to intervene in humanity's conflict with the Skarath Empire. "They see us as the aggressors," she said to her military advisors. 600 alien ships destroyed, and we're the ones they're worried about. General Young-Soo Kim shook his head. The Scarath invaded our space and fired first. Everything that followed was self-defense. Try explaining that to species who have never experienced human determination, Admiral Park replied. To them, we're an unknown threat that needs to be contained. The debate was interrupted by an urgent communication from the outer system monitoring stations. Commander Ji-Hai Lee's voice crackled through the speakers with barely controlled fury. Mr. President, we have a situation. The Scarath have just attacked the civilian colony on Titan. They're targeting non-combatants. The image that appeared on the main screen made everyone in the room fall silent. Titan's main settlement was burning. Orbital bombardment had destroyed the hydrocarbon processing facilities and residential areas. Emergency signals from the colony were weak and filled with static. Casualty reports? President Young asked quietly. Preliminary estimates suggest 8,000 civilians dead or missing. The attack came without warning. Emperor Vashitak had made a decision that would doom his entire species. Frustrated by his military losses, he had authorized attacks on human civilian targets, believing that terrorism would break humanity's will to fight. He could not have been more wrong. President Young's response was swift and absolute. Within hours, she addressed not just the human population, but the entire galaxy through hijacked communication networks. To the Scarath Empire and any species that might be listening, you have crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. For 2 conflicts, we have limited our response to military targets. We have shown restraint and sought to minimize casualties. That restraint ends now. Her image was transmitted across dozens of star systems, her words translated into hundreds of alien languages. The deliberate targeting of human civilians is an act of genocide. Our response will be proportional to your crime. Any species that supports or aids the Scarath Empire will be considered hostile. Any species that attempts to interfere with our response will be treated as combatants. She paused, letting the implications sink in across the galaxy. We did not seek this war. We wanted only to be left alone. But you have taught us that peace is not possible with those who would murder innocents. Very well, you will have war. The transmission ended, but its effects rippled through galactic civilization like a shockwave. General Kim activated Project Damocles with a single command phrase. Release the hounds. Throughout human space, massive structures that had been hidden for decades began to emerge from stealth. Platform after platform revealed itself, each one bristling with weapons that could crack worlds. The Damocles platforms were humanity's ultimate deterrent, kinetic bombardment systems capable of destroying entire planets. For 50 years, human engineers had been placing them in strategic locations throughout the galaxy, disguised as asteroids or hidden in the empty spaces between stars. Captain Dong-Hyun Kang commanded the first strike platform to go active. His facility, hidden in an asteroid belt near the Scarath border, had been dormant for 2 decades. Now it awakened with deadly purpose. Target confirmed, his weapons officer reported. Scarath Military Shipyard at Kepler 442. Range 27 light-years. Fire, Kang ordered. The kinetic projectile that launched from his platform was essentially a guided asteroid. 10,000 tons of dense metal accelerated to near-light speed. It would take months to reach its target, but when it arrived, it would impact with the force of 100 hydrogen bombs. Similar platforms throughout the galaxy received the same orders. Scarath military installations, industrial centers, and government facilities were targeted for destruction. The Empire would learn that attacking human civilians carried an unbearable price. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council watched in horror as their monitoring stations detected dozens of relativistic projectiles heading toward Scarath space. They have planet-killer weapons scattered throughout the galaxy, Ambassador Thex Moran whispered. How long have they been planning this? The answer came from an unexpected source. Ambassador Inho Bayek materialized in the council chamber through a holographic projector, becoming the first human to address the galactic community. "The Damocles platforms have been in position for decades," he said calmly. "They were placed as a deterrent against exactly this kind of situation. We hoped never to use them." Council Speaker Veltar leaned forward. "You speak of deterrence, yet you target civilian populations. Every target is a military or industrial facility," Beck replied firmly. "We do not target civilians unlike our enemies. However, we will destroy the infrastructure that supports their war machine. And if innocent beings die in these attacks? Then, the Skarath Emperor should have considered that before ordering the murder of human families on Titan." The council session devolved into chaos as different species took sides. Some supported humanity's right to defend itself, while others feared the implications of a species with such destructive capability. Commander Lee's reconnaissance ships were already deep in Skarath space, identifying targets and gathering intelligence for follow-up strikes. Her pilots risked their lives to ensure that human revenge would be both swift and precise. "Industrial complex on Scaros 7 appears to be a civilian area," one pilot reported. "Negative," Lee replied. "Intelligence confirms it's a weapons manufacturing facility disguised as civilian housing. Target is confirmed." The Skarath had learned to hide their military assets among civilian populations, but human intelligence was thorough and unforgiving. Specialist. Minho Park coordinated the information warfare campaign that accompanied the kinetic strikes. Human viruses spread through Skarath communication networks, broadcasting images of the destroyed Titan colony to every screen in the Empire. "Let them see what they did," President Young had ordered. "Let them understand that their leaders brought this destruction upon them." The psychological warfare was as devastating as the physical attacks. Skarath civilians watched the horror of Titan and realized that their empire had awakened something terrible in the darkness between stars. Emperor Vashitak raged in his throne room as reports poured in of human attacks throughout his territory. A dozen military installations had been destroyed, with more kinetic projectiles still in transit. "Send a message to the humans," he ordered. "Tell them we are willing to negotiate." But President Jung's response was broadcast for all to hear. "The time for negotiation ended when you murdered our children. Your empire will burn, and from its ashes the galaxy will learn that humanity protects its own." The first kinetic projectile struck the Skarath shipyard at Kepler 442 exactly 73 days after the attack on Titan. The impact vaporized the entire facility and created a crater visible from orbit. More strikes followed as the other projectiles reached their targets. Each impact was a reminder that humanity's reach extended far beyond their small corner of space. The Galactic Council's attempts at mediation fell on deaf ears. Humanity had moved beyond diplomacy into a state of total war that most galactic species had never experienced. Ambassador Bayek's final message to the Council was simple and terrifying. "We offered you the chance to know us as friends. The Skarath chose to know us as enemies. Choose wisely which example you wish to follow." The galaxy watched and learned as humanity demonstrated that some species should never be underestimated, and that attacking human civilians was a mistake that civilizations rarely survived. The war ended not with surrender, but with silence. The last transmission from the Skarath homeworld of Skaros came at 1427 Earth Standard Time on a Tuesday that would be remembered as the day an empire died. The message was simple. The capital is lost. Long live the empire. Then nothing. Admiral So Young Park stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the tactical display as human forces consolidated control over former Skarath territory. What had once been a mighty empire spanning dozens of star systems was now empty space, scattered debris, and the occasional survivor fleeing toward neutral territory. "Final casualty reports, Admiral," her aide announced. Park reviewed the numbers with grim satisfaction. The Skarath Empire had ceased to exist. Their homeworld was a cracked ball of cooling magma. Their fleets were scrap metal drifting in the hay, void, and their military leadership was either dead or scattered to the galactic winds. Human losses had been remarkably light considering the scope of the conflict. The key had been humanity's refusal to fight the kind of war their enemies expected. "Send a message to Earth," Park ordered. "Tell President Jung that Operation Final Answer is complete. The Skarath threat has been permanently eliminated." On Earth, President Haiwan Jung addressed a joint session of the Global Parliament and simultaneously broadcast to the galaxy. Her words would reshape the balance of power among the stars. "The war with the Skarath Empire is over," she announced. "We did not seek this conflict, but we finished it decisively. Let this serve as notice to all galactic civilizations. Humanity claims the right to exist in peace, but we will defend ourselves against any threat." She paused, looking directly into the cameras that carried her image across light years of space. "We are establishing new boundaries for human space, extending our territorial claims to include all systems within 50 light-years of Earth. These boundaries are not negotiable. Any unauthorized entry into human space will be considered an act of war." The reaction from the Galactic Council was immediate and predictable. Emergency sessions were called, ambassadors exchanged frantic messages, and military leaders across the galaxy began reassessing their threat evaluations of humanity. Ambassador Inho Baek received his new assignment with the quiet confidence that had made him humanity's most effective diplomat. He would be the first permanent human representative to the Galactic Council, tasked with establishing formal diplomatic relations with alien civilizations. "Your mission is simple," President Jung told him. "Make it clear that we want peaceful coexistence with any species willing to respect our sovereignty. Also make it clear what happens to those who don't." Baek's first address to the Galactic Council was delivered in the same chamber where, months earlier, the assembled species had debated how to contain the human threat. "We come not as conquerors, but as equals," he said, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. "Humanity seeks trade, cultural exchange, and mutual cooperation with all peaceful species. However, we will not tolerate aggression, invasion, or threats against our people." Council Speaker Veltar, whose species had mediated galactic conflicts for millennia, asked the question that everyone was thinking: "What assurance can you give? That humanity will not expand further into galactic territory?" "The same assurance we gave the Skarath," Beck replied calmly. "As long as you respect our boundaries and our people, you have nothing to fear from us." The Skarath learned the consequences of ignoring that principle. The unspoken message was clear. The Skarath Empire's fate awaited any species that chose to test humanity's resolve. Director Kyung-min Oh briefed President Jung on the scope of human intelligence operations throughout the galaxy. What she learned surprised even her. "We have monitoring stations in 70% of major galactic systems," Oh reported. "Our operatives have infiltrated the government structures of 15 different species. We know about military buildups, political changes, and technological developments across half the galaxy." "How long have we been doing this?" "Since the first radio telescopes detected alien signals, we've been preparing for contact. We knew this day would come eventually." The revelation that humanity had been watching the galaxy for decades sent shockwaves through alien intelligence services. Species that thought they were secure discovered that human agents had been operating among them for years. Admiral Park received her new assignment as Supreme Commander of the Human Defense Fleet. Her authority now extended far beyond the original solar system to encompass all of humanity's expanded territory. "Our doctrine is simple," she told her senior commanders. "We patrol our borders, we investigate any suspicious activity, and we respond to threats with overwhelming force. No species gets a second chance to attack humanity." The patrol ships that emerged from human shipyards bore little resemblance to the vessels that had fought the Skarath. These new ships incorporated alien technology captured during the war, combined with human innovations that pushed the boundaries of physics. Captain Sujin Huang commanded the new Dreadnought Sovereignty, a vessel that alone outgunned most species. entire fleets. Her mission was to patrol the border regions and ensure that humanity's territorial claims were respected. "Remember," she told her crew, "we're not looking for fights. But if someone brings a fight to us, we finish it permanently." The first test of humanity's new policy came from an unexpected source. The hegemony of worlds, a collection of smaller species that had banded together for mutual protection, decided to probe human defenses near the Centauri system. 3. Hegemony. Ships crossed into human space and ignored repeated warnings to withdraw. Captain Huang's response was swift and decisive. "This is Captain Huang of the Human Vessel Sovereignty. You have 60 seconds to reverse course and leave human space. This is your only warning." The hegemony ships continued their approach, apparently testing human resolve. They discovered that humans didn't bluff. The Sovereignty's main gun fired once. The lead hegemony ship simply ceased to exist, vaporized by a weapon that released more energy than some stars. The remaining 2 ships fled so quickly they left debris trails in their wake. News of the incident spread through galactic communication networks within hours. The message was clear. Humanity's territorial claims were backed by the ability and willingness to enforce them absolutely. Ambassador Bayek addressed the subsequent emergency council session with patient explanation rather than apology. "The hegemony ships were warned repeatedly," he said. "They chose to ignore those warnings. We cannot allow the perception that human space can be violated without consequences. You destroyed an entire ship and crew for a minor territorial incursion," protested Ambassador Thex Moran. "We destroyed a ship that invaded our territory after being warned to withdraw," Beck corrected. "The crew's fate was decided by their own commanders, not by us." The cold logic was unanswerable. Humanity had established rules and enforced them consistently. Any species that chose to test those rules did so at their own risk. Within a year, the new galactic order had stabilized around humanity's presence. Trade agreements were established with peaceful species, cultural exchanges began with curious civilizations, and mutual defense pacts were signed with species that recognized the value of human protection. But the galaxy also learned to give human space a wide berth. The boundaries established by President Jung were respected not out of diplomacy, but out of fear. Director O's intelligence networks expanded throughout known space, ensuring that humanity would never again be surprised by alien aggression. Early warning systems detected any military buildup that might threaten human interests. "We know about threats before they become dangerous," O reported to President Jung, "and we have the means to eliminate them before they fully develop." The being. Damocles platforms remained in position throughout the galaxy, silent reminders of humanity's reach. Most species preferred not to think about the fact that human planet-killer weapons were hidden in their own star systems. Admiral Park established the Human Space Patrol, an elite force tasked with maintaining security throughout humanity's territory. Their ships carried a simple message emblazoned on their hulls: "By invitation only." The patrol ships were crewed by veterans of the Scarath War, officers who had learned the importance of projecting strength to maintain peace. They operated under rules of engagement that were generous with warnings, but absolute in enforcement. 5 years after the destruction of the Scarath Empire, Ambassador Bayek delivered humanity's annual address to the Galactic Council. His words reflected the new reality that had emerged from the ashes of the First Galactic War in centuries. "Humanity has found its place among the stars," he said. "We are neighbors to those who wish neighborly relations. We are trading partners to those who offer honest commerce. We are allies to those who share our values of peace and mutual respect." He paused, looking around the chamber at the representatives of dozens of species. "But we are also guardians of our own territory and protectors of our own people. The galaxy is large enough for all of us to coexist peacefully. All that is required is the wisdom to respect each other's sovereignty and the restraint to resolve disputes through words rather than weapons." The final line of his address became the unofficial motto of human foreign policy. We did not seek to become a galactic power.